Hi friends, welcome to my weekly live stream about the Uno platform. I spend about an hour every week taking a look at Uno platform issues and answering questions on the stream and looking at all the new things that have been happening. I wasn't streaming last week because I was at the MVP Summit. Been having the chance to catch up with a lot of Microsoft people and other MVPs. It was a very nice week. If you were there and watching, I hope I could run into you. And if it was not, then it was not the case. Maybe next year. So on the latest news, a few things that have been happening in the past weeks. One being that we've continued adding some new Uno Tech Bites, so bite-sized content, so that you can take a look at what we're doing in Uno. So some of them, or it's actually quite a bit. You can see all sorts of content that's panned through all the features that Uno platform has to offer. If you don't find anything that may be of interest to you, you can just leave us a message. Maybe we can create some additional content that may be of interest. There's also some content for Figma, and it's pretty small. Probably it's just if you have a few minutes to take a look at some Uno content, it'll be a lot of fun. Another piece that we've been doing is helping Toyota migrates their own application from Xamarin Forms to Uno platform, and you can go take a look at the video and from their migration from one to the other. It's always nice to see bigger brands take a look at Uno platform and migrate their applications over. It's very nice to see such names. So today we're going to take a look at a few things. The first one is an issue that was open a few days ago, or actually yesterday, was about updating a text block in a list view that causes a flickering effect. So I don't know if it's going to be visible completely on the screen when we're making the video, but let's see. If we can launch the application, and so there's a bit of resizing, and then we can see that there's a flickering that happens there. And when I can see that it says that the application is targeting it's targeting Windows. So what that would mean is that the application is probably running in WinApp SDK, but I'm not sure. So we're going to take a look at that. And I have the application already. So we're going to run that application and see what happens. So it's pretty much about launching that application and looking at the app and see what happens. So that's what we're going to do. So this is the application, and we can just launch it up and see what we can do with that. Okay, so we have the Windows head. So that's what the sample says to do. So we're going to start the application and see if we get something of interest. If it actually shows in the stream, which should be. Oh, we can see that it flickers. Okay, so there are multiple things here. The first is that it shows in a weird way. I can see that the text color is incorrect. It's probably because of the theming the theme of my Windows. So we can probably just change the requested theme to be light, so that it shows correctly. Well, not here. So that would be in the app head. So we can set it here. And let's see again if what happens here. So still on the Windows head. So this is important to see because that particular issue, when it runs on the Windows head, Uno is not present at all, at least for that particular target. And what that means is that you're completely using what's coming from Microsoft. So from what I can see, it's using a dark theme, but it's not showing anything of interest. Let me see, did I change colors here? Hi, FreddyFX. Thanks for joining. We're taking a look at an issue of flickering on the list view and see if we can find something of interest to change. So we have the client here. So in the shell, the main page, we're trying to see if we have we have a background, black background here. So let's put it white for now. If it's, let's see if it helps the content. It's still dark for some reason. I wonder if there's there are multiple issues here. So we've been using, Microsoft has been pushing one specific issue, one specific feature recently, and it's called probably the worst name of a feature, and it's called accelerate something. So if you search into preview options, preview features, there's something that's called accelerate build or something. So we're going to find that one out and disable that. We have a preview that's coming, an update that's coming up that will disable that feature because it doesn't work properly with Uno. But let's see what we have here. So the preview feature, it's called accelerate builds or something. Load faster, multiple branches, razor projects, build acceleration. Okay, so we have enabled build acceleration by default. So this is causing some trouble. And it doesn't need to be Uno projects, it can be other types of projects. And it's causing some trouble because it's building projects partially and pushing content on other targets. And it's and the output project, and some of the heads are not liking it that much. So let's see if that helps there for the content. Let's change. Okay, so we have white content here, but is it working? Not really. Okay, so it looks like the sample is having some trouble. Well, maybe it should have been dark. And maybe the rebuild is going to work properly this time. So the side effect of this particular change is that when you're building your application, some of the changes are not going to end up in the running app, and so it is doing the right thing, but for some reason it's not showing the right content. So that's quite interesting. So we got a shell. Do we have a window somewhere? There's no window. Not sure what that template is doing. If I change it to white, the background is not changing. So that would mean that there's something else that's changing the color. Or if it's changing in color, it's probably transparent or something. But we can see the effect. So it's kind of flickering in the wrong way. Okay, so there you go. So it's setting to, okay. So I don't know if you're seeing it on the stream, but there are some kind of a black flicker that happens. And well, it's definitely not supposed to happen. So let's see what happens there. The first thing that we're going to do, so you've noticed that the content is running currently. So the code that we've built is running currently on Windows. That means it's running on WinApp SDK. And thanks, Hakan. So it's the Windows head. So that means that it would be a WinUI bug or WinApp SDK bug in that context. So what we're going to do is test on Uno. So really the Skia runtime, and see if it reproduces the issue. So we're going to see if the application is exhibiting the same problem. So in here, so it looks like, oh, it will still have that the scanning issue. This is something that we fixed in the latest version of Uno, but you can see here that it's updating, but it's not flickering. So this is really a WinApp SDK issue. Now what we can take a look is probably just provide something that will work around that issue, at least on Windows, and see maybe it's something that we can provide some hints around the behavior. So we see here that we have that chat message template. Let's go take a look at how that particular content is built. Okay, so we have a generated presentation for what it looks like. This is a bindable chat menus. Okay, this is using Uno reactive, so MVUX, and it's making updates to the list state that's available there. And we're calling update async on the list. And my guess would be that because we're doing this, we're probably changing the whole list every time. And if we're doing this, it could be that because the chat message disp here is changed, which is that particular property. Maybe the Windows runtime is not, the WinUI runtime is not liking that kind of a change, and probably should be having sent other types of messages. So what we could do, what could we do just to see if we can alter that particular content? So I know that with regards to loading, when you're updating a list or a list view, it kind of changes the content, particularly if the collection that's being sent every time is a different one. So that can be. And one thing that we could try out really quickly is to just see if we're actually having different, just to be sure if we're having different instances that are coming up. So, so in that particular context, we're binding on chat message disp here. So we're binding on list state. So that means that we should be taking a look at the bindable page model here. So let's make a variable. So it is updating from a thread, but because it's using Uno reactive, so MVUX, then it's not updating from thread. So it's really the modifications are met from that thread, but the manipulations that are done for that bindable chat page model, they're coming on the UI thread, and we can probably take a look at that particular property change message that's coming up. You can see here there's reactive on property model property change, so we can probably just put a breakpoint here and see if we do get different properties there. So let's go for the Windows version, and we're going to put some breakpoints in there and see if we can actually break. If it doesn't break, we're going to do something else. Okay, so I don't know if you've so maybe you haven't seen, but there's something very interesting. So there was an animation that showed very quickly. There was a checkbox that showed up here, and that could be because the template that is used for the ListView is too complex. So what we could change is create a maybe create a style for the ListView. So let's say if we do ListView, so it would be item container style, and we create a style. So the target type would be ListView item, if I remember correctly. That would be ListView item, and then we're going to set a property to template, and in there we're going to set a data template, if I remember correctly. So that I'm doing just that by heart, but that should be good enough. And in there we should be setting a content presenter. I don't believe we need to set anything because it's going to pick up the content template directly. We need to do setter of value, of course, which would otherwise not work. Okay, so we have the content presenter. Let's put a border around it with some color just to see if we're having the right content. And we can see if we just maybe sometimes just manipulating the template can make it easier to work with. So by default, you get what is called the full template, and that full template is actually pretty complex. It has all sorts of drag and drop cues and selection and things that you may not need that could make the template too slow. That's the list view too slow, and the second part would be that it consumes more memory and probably causing that kind of a bug that you were just seeing. So what we're getting here, let's actually put a height to it so that we can have something to look for. We're going to put a height of 50 and min width as well, so that we can actually show that particular content. So let's try it again and see what we get. So effectively, when we're doing this, we're changing the type. So it's a control template, not a data template. Control template, and we have to set a target type to be content control, because the ListView item is a content control. Okay. So yeah, so what we're doing here is effectively reducing the complexity of the template to see if maybe there's something inside of the template that causes trouble. Well, it's almost there. So you can see there's still a bit of complexity here, and it's still flickering. So we can see that we have our red content that's showing up the right way. So we can see that it's not wrapping. Not sure if it's related. Probably related to my content presenter that's not doing the right thing, but that's fine. So we can see that it's still flickering. It's showing the right content immediately, but it's not showing the binding right away. So simplifying the template is not enough. Now, is it because the content that's bound is not the right one? I would tend to think that it's not the case. If we take a look at the chat model again, if there's a there's a delay here, but the delay is not supposed to be having an impact in any way. Let's put the text wrapping just to be sure, and see if it's not causing the issue here. Otherwise, what we can do is try to see if it's a binding issue. So try to determine if it's a binding issue. We're going to try to set a default value to the binding. So we can see that when we're putting small text, it doesn't happen. But when we're having more text, it starts to flicker to nothing. So probably there's nothing, then there's something to show. We know that the first item is available, and you can see that when I click the item, nothing's showing up. Selection's not available, and there's a good reason for this. Is that the selections part, where the hovering is part of the template, and I removed that hovering support from the control template here, so it's not doing anything, which is expected. The wrapping is not available, but there's probably something else to do. Could be probably the text block here, but it's supposed to be wrapping, so maybe it's supposed to be having a maximum size. Not to worry at that point. So what we can try to do is set a fallback value. So let's set it to invalid. And we also have a second one that we can set, which is the target null value. And we're going to set to valid 2. So if we see either of those, that would mean that we have a temporary content showing up. So the original content is set, but the binding is taking time to update. Could be something like that. Okay, so it's not showing up any of the intermediate content. So that means that it's not a binding issue. Now let's see, what can we do? So if we do a stack panel, and we show the data context directly. So we're talking about just having a binding this way. So what this will do is it will show the type of the data context that's bound to the text block and the stack panel, and we'll see if it's a data context changing issue. So maybe it becomes null, then it becomes something, or if it's just plain text list view issue. Okay, so we can see here that both are flickering. What that means is that what that means is that there's something around the way WinUI interprets the coming content that fails. Okay, so what else could we do to try it out? We could put a text block that's just static and see if that one flickers as well. So if we set static content, does it continue to flicker? So we may not have enough height now. So let's put it to 100. I see Micknitz join. Hello, Micknitz. Micknitz is one of the very frequent listener and live listener of the stream. Okay, so this is even more interesting. So we can see that our static content is also flickering. So that rules out completely the data binding content. So that means that we're having some issues with some content being shown to something and then something else afterwards. So maybe there's some intermediate content that's being set to the list view that doesn't work. So we can rule out data context. We can rule out the fact that the template is smaller. Though if you make a smaller template, it makes for faster drawing, which is something that you would want to do in all cases. So that's very important. So what we can take a look at now is probably just take a look at what's coming out of that binding context. And it tends to look at the fact that there's either an issue in WinUI or that there's an issue in MVUX. That could also be, and I think David from the team is going to love this. And he's not listening to that stream, so that's going to be a surprise for him. So if I make a model property, we're going to be taking a look at the property change and just log them out and see what we get. So, and we should be having that in the output, but if it's not showing, we're probably going to be seeing something different. So we had the property changed event. We got so let's take a look at the property name to see what we get. And we're going to also show the value of the model, maybe the hash code. So just to see if it's different values. So it would be, so not a model. That's not the model we need because the model we know is there. But that would be chat message disp, which is the iList state, but not that one. So we need chat model dip. So that one is a property that's mutable, that can be data bound to some XAML content. And this one could be null, if I'm not mistaken, unless I'm missing something. So that one's still a reactive feed, but it's probably something I'm missing. So does it have... no, I'm looking at the model, so that's probably... Or maybe we need to go with the properties like this. I don't recall. No, it doesn't show. So let's use that one first and see what we get. So we get the chat message disp, and we got no, that's the only one that we have. Okay. So let's just see for this one, just to see if we have different values. And it's probably castable to something else that we don't see, but it's probably something that WinUI does. Maybe it's a collection view or something, so we don't see what the value is here. But that's okay. So the get hash. Let's show the get hash code. That's true. Live sessions are the best place to learn. If you ask questions, if you don't, and you can take a look at it afterwards, that's fine as well. But it's quite different. So we don't have a console to take a look at. So let's go for debug instead. was system diagnostics. So it may not compile. No, it does compile. Okay, so it may not compile if you have Android selected, but in that case, that's not what we have. Okay, so let's see what we get in the output window. And we get nothing. Why do we get nothing? Okay, so we don't have a property change. Okay, so if we don't have a property change, that means that the list view, the content of the list view that we're seeing here is actually something else. So that means that we're going to have to hook onto the changes that are done by the chat message disp content. So my guess would be, and we can go take a look at what that specific property is. That chat message disp is a collection of some kind. Yes, so it provides instances, and this is a bindable list feed. This is something that is enumerable, so that's why we have interesting content, and that also means that we should be able to cast it to notify collection change, maybe notify collection changed. There you go. INCC. So we're going to hook onto the changes for this one. And we're looking for collection changed. And we're going to write our collection changed. So probably not super useful. Actually, no, it is useful. So we're going to take a look at the type of changes that are propagated. So we have an action property, the NCC collection changed. And what we're going to do is that because we have hot reload, we're going to go back a little bit, and then let's see if we can get into. So that's a notify collection change content. And we're going to be going into the identify collection change quite a bit, I would think. Okay, so we got replace. So it's replacing content, and it looks like the replacing content is doing what we're seeing here. And so we're doing the right, the collection change is doing the right thing, but for some reason, the way ListView handles this is incorrect. So there's no replacement of any, there's no, let's say, there's no null that's coming up. So let's say there's no value that's coming up. That should be correct. We could actually take a look at the change itself to see if we get no intermediate value that could cause trouble. But I would tend to think that's not the case. So we have a replace, and what's replaced is replacing item 0. So it's replacing one item from this one to this. So the original item, so the old item was content 1, and the new item is content 1 aha. Okay, so we see that the new change is coming up, and it's the right one. We don't have any null value that could explain why there's invalid content that's showing up. So the new value is, again, a newer value, which is what we expected. So that rules out the fact that the content that's provided by the collection is incorrect. So maybe it's a ListView issue then. And to determine if it's a ListView issue, one thing that we can do is transform this into an items control. So items control basically does the same thing as ListView, but it's doing less. So there's no virtualization. There's all sorts of things that are removed. but in our context, that's just what we need. And we're just going to do a content control here as the template. And we're going to start again and see what we do get this time. So it's not happy. Why is it not happy? Oh, control is definitely not something that works. So it's a content control. So we're going to try to see if the ListView is the issue. I know if you take a look at the sources from UI, you can see that the ListView control is extremely complex. There's lots of things that are happening there. And maybe there's a bug with the replace method, which should be working properly, but does not. So for some reason, okay, so there's a system, there's an argument exception there. That's interesting. Okay, so that would mean that replace is not supported by items control. That's quite interesting. Let's see if it's just our item container that fails. That could definitely happen. Ah, okay. That's very interesting. So what you can see here is that with item control, it's not flickering. So the replace is happening because we can see that the content has been updating, which is what we expected. But the content is not having any issues, and it's updating properly, and it's not flickering. So this is definitely a ListView issue. Now, depending on what we need to display, we may be able to use something else. We can actually also take a look at what Uno's doing. Let's see if we're getting something that works properly there. Okay, so it's not flickering, which is good. Okay, so that's where the problem lies. So we know that ListView is the issue. So let's see if we just bring it back. So one way to work around it is to use an items control, if possible. That could be one of the ways to work around it. Another way to work around it would be to use items repeater. And for that one, I'm not too sure if I'm going to have the right syntax to do it completely, but let's try it anyways. There's item template as well, so we can try to use the same thing, but I'm not too sure if it's gonna work. We may have to create a separate template. Let's try it anyways. So there we have our items repeater. So that's another way to display something, and we can see if it's gonna help. Okay, so it's displaying some content as well. So we can see here that it's displaying properly. It's not having issues. Oh, we're on a Mac OS. It's on GTK, so it's not helping. So let's go see with Windows if it helps. Okay, it's not flickering either. So one of the ways to work around it would be to use either items control or items repeater. That's one of the two ways to work around that particular issue. That being said, that's something that should be reported to Microsoft, and that's probably something that we're going to do. We're pretty much going to take the sample that's been provided by the contributor and post it in the WinUI repository, saying that calling the replace action on an item collection is causing the item to flicker. But if you're not using any of those, you can use items repeater, and that will just work as expected. So know that if you're using items repeater, there are a few things that you won't be able to have, like for instance, selection is not there by default, so you have to re-implement it by yourself. There are a few other things like maybe drag and drop or other pieces like this that may not be available. So that's an FYI. You may need to do some of it by yourself and to get similar features. So there you have it. This is not an Uno issue. This is really a WinApp SDK issue. Good. So next one is a ComboBox issue that says that ComboBox doesn't display anything when having a selected value set via binding the item source. Okay, not too sure exactly what that is, but I know that there's a repro, so we're going to take a look at the repro. So let's go and take a look at that particular repro and see if we can get something interesting. So we have our WASM sample, and I'm going to be getting those out. You know, talking about the previous issue, one of the things that's quite important is, you know, when you're opening an issue on Uno, we're asking the question, does it work in WinUI? And it's a very important one because depending on whether it does or does not, we redirect the issue or provide workarounds where that makes sense. And in that context, we know that this is not an Uno issue; it's a WinUI 3 issue. Okay, so there's not much in terms of repro, but we can go take a look at what the code does and see if we can figure out what the issue is and where to update this. Okay. So we have a page, we have a button that sets something binding to the item source. That's one way. We have a selected item binding that's two-way. And we have a selection changed event that probably is there for debugging, and selected index that's set to 0. Okay. And in the code behind, we have a list that's not observable, but that's probably not a problem. We have a set item that sets the items to the list. And that's it. Okay, so we can see, we can just take a look at what Windows does already. So that's the first thing to try to figure out. So is it an issue on Uno's end, or is it an Uno that's, you know, a behavior that may be correct, but that the user does not recognize? So that could be, that's happened a few times. When is set item calls? I think it's called by. Actually, I don't know. When is it called? It's called on the click. Okay, so it's click. It's in the button click. Good call. Okay, so when we do set items, it selects the first item, which is what we would think to expect. And if we test that in Uno, let's see. If we start the app, what's the behavior that Uno is showing? So we have nothing, and then if we set the items, nothing in there, but we have the items that are available. Okay, so the difference in behavior would look like it's related to the selected index being set as an explicit value. So that's an explicit value defined here. And what I would think happens here is that when we're setting the item source, we're probably manipulating the selected item or selected index here, and that's causing the issue. So McNett's asking, should it be observable then? Do you mean the selected index or the item source? Because it's, you know, selected index. So we can see that the ComboBox selection change is being raised. Well, so so the item source to know if it's if it needs to be observable, not necessarily, because the thing is that if we want it to be observable, so if you would need it to be observable if you change the contents of the collection once it's bound, but that's not the case here. You know, when you're clicking the set items, you're actually changing the whole collection entirely, so it doesn't need to it's not a big deal in that context. It doesn't need to notify that something has changed. So So if we take a look again at the, maybe we could take a look at the logging here to see what's being called. So if we click on set item, we can see that item has been selected. And then we have a null. Okay, so that's interesting. So so it's been selected properly, and then it's unselected. That's actually quite interesting. It's selected and selected. Okay, so that's clearly wrong. And that should not happen. If we take a look again at the Windows. So yes, it is using the binding because it's bound to items, and you can see that. So it's bound to items on one way, and it's using the set property here that will raise a notified property change. So it really is updating the ListView source, the item source for the ComboBox. I don't have that. I probably need to change the console write line to be a debug instead. And let's try it again. Let's see what we get. Okay, so we have item 1 has been selected, and then item set. Okay, so we really have what we need here. It's just that in Uno, we have an additional event that resets the selected index for no good reason. And it's probably unrelated to this, because the thing is that if you don't set anything, it will, I'm not even sure if you set 1, if it will actually select the first one. Let's see. I also know that we changed a few things in Uno 5.2, so we're going to take a look quickly and see if there's a change there. Okay, so if you set a value here, it's really using that value. It's not overriding it. So it's selecting that is not manipulated that much on loading of the item source. So that's one of the interesting things. Now, if we take a look here, and let's go and update Uno to the latest version and see what happens there. So we're gonna just change the active version of Uno, and the last version that we need would be the last preview build. So 5.2.204, 2004. Change that here. Gonna close the solution and start it again. This is something that we've been asking Microsoft to take a look at. The fact that you have to close Visual Studio and start it again because of the Uno SDK. But anyways, that's if you wanna upvote it, it's actually something that's quite interesting. Just let me show you where you can find that issue. So I think we have it somewhere in there. And you get support for SDK version management. So that particular issue, if you want to upvote it, that would be very appreciated. It's a blocker in a sense that you can't modify the version manually without having to reload the solution. But that's known. Okay, so let's see quickly if we have fixed something that could definitely happen. Looks like we've broken something. And by pinvoke. Okay, so it looks like I've changed something there, and we have a broken change somewhere in there in Uno that causes this to happen. I don't recall exactly what that would be. So what we're gonna do is create a separate app. So Miknets is asking, can the SLN file of a Uno SDK move to another folder, maybe by moving the global JSON to? I mean, yes, it's possible to do, but why would you want that? You're just curious. What's the use case for this? So we have a missing target here, so we're going to create an additional target here, just with the same name, so that we can add a new project. Okay, so this is called wasm sample. I think I have a temp folder. I'm going to create it there. And we're going to add a WPF head so that we can go troubleshoot that content, just to make sure that we have that particular issue. Try to see if we have that fix already available. WPF create. We're going to just copy and paste the sample from one site to the other. And okay, so the one we need is the SkiaWPF, which is here. Let's go here. And we're going to take that whole folder and we're going to paste it into our wasm sample solution here. And we're just going to add that head again. So wasm sample WPF. So the reason I'm adding this is because, you know, I want to make sure that we don't have an issue, and it looks like the latest of the dev builds of Uno is having some trouble. So we're gonna have to figure this out. But in the meantime, we can use the WPF one and see what happens there. So why would it happen here? Okay, so it needs to have some additional dependencies that we don't see here, and I'm gonna pick them up into the sample that I created. Package props, we had Skia GTK, Skia WPF, so we need that one. We need, remember, so we need Skia Views Uno WinUI. It's there, and probably Scotty as well. Let's see if it's better now. It's lots better. Okay, so if we start the app, do we have the same problem? If we do, that means that it's not something that we fixed, which could definitely happen. Okay, it's not fixed at all. So we can see that nothing's selected where it should be. And we still have our null item has been selected, which is incorrect. Okay, great. So the best way to do this is to go and create a unit test and to see if we can reproduce it. We can reproduce it in a reliable way. So to do this, we need to go back to Uno. So this is the Uno solution. We're going to change the cross-targeting override props file so that we can work with the net8. We don't need any NuGet override at this time because we're just going to do everything locally in the solution. And we're going to be using the unit tests only filter that will load the we're going to load everything up here, and we're going to try to add an additional test in our Uno UI test here. We should be having ComboBox tests. We do. We should be having quite a few, at least in there. So we have a few others that are available as part of runtime tests. So this is unit tests. We also have runtime tests. Okay, so Miknets is saying, because I would like to add an Uno project to an existing solution. Well, you can definitely do that. The only thing that you may have to do is, because there's notion of directory build props and the directory packages props. You're gonna have to merge those to be in a separate location, but you can also add the projects one by one. That will work just fine. There's nothing specific, with contents. You can add the projects that are available there. That will just work. So if you have anything that doesn't work, or maybe there's a need for additional tests or guidance, just let us know. Maybe we can add some more. Okay. So the test that we're trying to do here is about selected item and pre-selected. Okay, so I see Chewy Padilla has a question. Saw the video date calendar picker issue with main date on iOS. Is there a fix for that? Yes, it is. It's available in our 5.2 release that will be coming up soonish, and you can try it out in that version. Okay, so we need to have our ComboBox, and probably use that one instead. The other one was probably a bit too complex. And we're going to try to replicate the behavior. So we have our strings here. We have a ComboBox. In here, we're adding items. That's not what we need. The one that we need is that we need to set the ComboBox selected item. I think that was. If I go back to the sample that we had selected index. Okay, so we're selecting the index. Selected index. I don't know why there's no IntelliSense in that project, and that's very curious. It says net 7, and I wonder if it's caused by this for some reason. Maybe that we can fix. So I wonder. Yeah, it's using net 7. It's not supposed to be using net 7. Net unit tests. We've probably been doing something in the project here that causes IntelliSense to break. Not too sure what that could be. If it doesn't work, we're gonna move it to if we can't get IntelliSense, we're gonna go to runtime tests instead. Okay, so we have a ComboBox selected index. That's very curious. I think we had that last time when we tried, and it got broken. I wonder if so the files that we have, they're called C# compiler. I wonder if it is related to maybe the version of the compiler. So because I'm using the preview version of Visual Studio, so maybe we're using an earlier version. So let's try to see which version we have here. So in the directory build props, we're forcing a version of the C# compiler, and that one is probably not the latest one. Let's go see. So we're searching for Microsoft Net compilers. Microsoft Net compilers. So that's not the right one. Okay, so we have 410 final. Okay, so let's go for this one. Maybe that's it. So we're going to close the solution just to make sure that we have Visual Studio not complaining too much about it. And if it's still not, nope, that's not the right one. All cancel works. That's good. I need the unit test version of the filter. Okay, so is Visual Studio liking it a little bit more? No, for some reason we broke something here that causes IntelliSense to not work properly. I wonder, maybe we can see something in the build logging, maybe. when we're build logging, sometimes we can see some interesting things. So if we reload again, and we take a look at the design time build, because those are the ones that are providing interesting information about what IntelliSense is going to be using. Maybe there's something that's wrong there and that fails or something. Oh, there you go. It failed. Okay. So that's definitely not going to help. And it failed for what reason? Failed for nothing. That's quite interesting. There are no errors. Why is that? Prepare for build. There's nothing. No error. Okay, so it's failed, but without errors. That's not super useful. What about this one? Failed without errors. Okay, maybe it's because I don't have the right... No, it's diagnostics, so it should be giving the right results. Okay, this one is correct. Okay, Project Uno UI is not compatible with Net 7. Uno UI test target Net 8. Okay, so that may be the reason why it fails, because we can see that's Net 7 here and we're targeting Net 8. So maybe we should be changing this so that we get the right target framework. So we can see here that we're using the Net Unit Tests target framework, which is something that we're defining at the top. So let's go find that one out and see where we're defining it. And we're calling it Net Previous. Net Previous is not what we like, so we're just going to change that one and see if we get something better this time. Okay, so it's still Net 7. Probably need to close the solution again. Okay, so we have this, we have that. Okay, so now it's saying Net 8. And do we get IntelliSense now? By the looks of it, it's still a no. So we have some of it, but not completely. So we got some of the, so okay, we can see that Uno UI test is giving the right, is finishing properly, but there are others that are not finishing properly. So this one is failing for another reason. So it says Uno UI is not compatible with Net 7 and Uno UI targets Net 8. Okay, that's interesting. So it looks like for some reason we're still having some backwards dependency that's still using the previous. What would that be? Net current. Okay, so that would be, let's take a look again. So it says Project Uno UI is not compatible with Net 7. Not sure exactly why it's saying that, because there's not supposed to be any dependency to Uno UI. Supposed to be other types of dependencies. Looks like it's doing something with the dependencies, but this is new. It's still not giving anything. Oh no, there you go. It works. Okay, so that's better. So we still have a problem here for some reason, but IntelliSense is working now. So the issue was that the net previous was not the right one. So that explains it. Okay. Now we can go back to actually doing some testing. So our test is here, and so we set the selected index, and then we need to set the item source to items, And what we need to have is that selected index is not supposed to be -1. And we also want to look at the events that are being raised by selection changed. Just to ensure that we only raise one event, because that's what WinUI is doing. So what we need here is we're going to make just a variable changed count, and I'm going to do ++. We can probably store the values. We'll see afterwards if it's needed. And we're asserting that well, actually no, so it's supposed to be 0. If it's different, we're not good. And the selection change should be just 1. So let's try with this. So I have my tests here. And let's take a look at the build, see if it works properly, but it looks like it's going to, now that we have all the dependencies running properly. So one of the things that's of interest, and if you have a takeaway from this particular live stream, is that when you're doing the build logging here, and if you have failed design time builds, in general, you're gonna have issues. Whether it's the way Visual Studio is going to represent things out from the Solution Explorer here, it may just show things like you can see here that there's an icon that's not supposed to be here, or you're going to have weird content happening with IntelliSense or things like that. So that's where you need to take a look at. So hopefully, when you take a look at those design time builds, you're going to get an actual error that you can look at, which was not the case about the one that I was looking at before, but who knows? It may be of help somewhere. Okay, so my test is failing. Okay, it's not showing up here. If I just select the test that failed, it says expected 0, and we have -1. Okay, so it definitely raises the wrong event, and we can see that it's setting it to -1 for the wrong reason. So we're going to take a look at why, and to do that, we're going to just put a breakpoint there and see what happens and why do we end up at that location, because we're resetting the value for no good reason. Okay, so we have the selection that changed, and in the event, we have a new value here, and it says added items for selection changed for some reason. It doesn't say anything, but it says that items have been added. That's actually quite interesting. Okay, so we're getting once. So we're getting once, and how many times do we get there? 2. Oh, we're getting, oh, interesting. Okay, so we're getting there twice, and the first one is valid, but the second one is not. So we can see that in the list of features, a list of events that are being sent by the ComboBox. So is the build logging feature new to 17.10? No, it's actually something that was there a very long time ago. I tend to think that it was in Visual Studio 15 and not even 16, but it's not something that's there by default. And if you want to find it out, go to platform documentation, search for build troubleshooting, and then just go down a bit, and you can find a section that's called generating bin log from Visual Studio, and you can find how to install the bin log viewer, as well as install the project system tools for 2022 or 2019 if you're still using it. And that is the tool that will add the menu that you saw in my instance. So once you have that, then you can right click on the items, on the individual items for the logs, and then use the bin log viewer to view them properly. Okay, so we know that we're called twice. The first one is the right one. The second one is incorrect. And we're going to try to figure out why. So let's restart the test by moving the pointer. And so the first one we know that is correct because it's a property change. And we know that the selected index in our context. So we get that one. So if we search for locals and we do a selection, we can't do that. We search for a selected index, which should be somewhere in there. Selected index is 0, which is correct for now, at least. But we should be having something different when we move to the second one. And the second one sets it to -1. And that is called by reset index if needed. Okay, so we have something explicit that says if the item source, so we're not synchronizing with current item, we're not having a collection view, and if the index is not null, it's not -1, we're resetting it, which is definitely incorrect. But now the reason why are we doing this in that context, that I don't know. And we'll probably have additional behaviors that are related to this that we're probably not doing the right way. My guess would be, and that's something that we have not picked up by from the WinUI sources, is that when we're changing the item source, I think Microsoft is doing something around this, saying that when the item source is changed, there's a capture of the value that was set originally, and then it's reset just right after, I think. But it may not be the case either because we're resetting the value. Maybe that's not the right one. For instance, what we don't know. So let's do something like this. Let's say we have in one sample that was there originally, we set it to 10. 10 is not a value that's available in the item source, so we should not be able to set it. So what does Windows do in that context? Does it reset the value to something that makes sense? Maybe it sets it to 1. Maybe it sets it to -1 because the item is not something that can be selected. Let's take a look. Well, it doesn't work. That's interesting. So the error is cannot locate resource wasm. Okay, that's curious. What did I do? It's definitely not the right issue. What did I change? Definitely change something. Okay, let's rebuild just to see if there's not a bug that we did, or maybe it's something that we broke. Let me revert back to another version of Windows just to be sure. We're gonna revert back to a stable version. Maybe we broke something in there. Okay, so we get Uno UI, and we need to have the latest stable, which is 5187. Okay, so let's see. Oh, I need to restart the whole thing. And at this time, okay, so if we set the items to, so this was set to 10, and then, okay, so what we can see here is that we set it to 10, it stayed there, doesn't look like it changed, but the selected item is not the 10th because there's no 10, and the value hasn't changed either. So that's quite interesting. So the selection changed. Okay, so the value would stay that way, I would think. And if maybe we can just go take a look here. Yeah, I would say the selected item. Yeah, it's set to null, so because it was not updated. So it didn't even get updated in that case here, because 10 is not the right value. If I set it to 1, I could try to set it afterwards. Okay, so we can see item 2 is selected this time, so that works. So there's that, and then if we set it to something else, that is interesting. CB1, we're going to set it to something else. So let's see, 1 selected index. If I set it to 10, does it fail? We'll see. My guess would be that it fails, but okay, it does fail. So that's what we expect. So it says that value doesn't fall within the expected range. So it looks like there's some kind of an edge case that's handled. So when the selected index is set before before you set the item source, it kind of ignores the value and goes along with it. So it means that we're probably going to have to do something around this to handle that particular value change before there's a collection, I would guess. So we're going to have to take a look at what UI does when handling the selected index, so that we can replicate the value. So that's it for today. I think we've done quite a bit, and we know that there's a bug, and we can have to take a look at it and see where we go. And so that's it for today. So until next week, happy coding, and bye for now.